create the fate. That was the name of this episode of Channel for the Soul Live that I was given right before coming online. So I want to tune in and figure out what it is that we do that affects the fate that we choose in this moment. We're going to talk about whether fate actually exists in essence, or if it's all written in stone, like so many believe. It is not ever written in stone. What is happening is we are creating vibrations across the world in this moment for those who want to decide to take a little ride on the Reading Railroad, right? Monopoly, that's another game for certain people. This is about those souls who are being labeled as evil because they are of a higher income bracket than others. And we want to talk about the nature of, do we actually have a say in our experience of fate? Does it mean I'm never able to get to those upper echelons of society if I hold certain values? Do I value money? Or do I say, oh yeah, I like that one? Do I value it or do I expect it? See, a lot of people are under the assumption that if they just place their mindset on rich or value, it's like the bargains. So if you are in the mindset of I need to shop for bargains, you're going to be in that envisioning of either two things, right? Many. You could be saying to yourself, I'm going to save my pennies, which is what I was told to do in a guidance session, right? No, I was told in my soul-to-soul communication that I needed to save some pennies. This was a seed that was planted months ago, and there was a reason for it. Now, what happened along the way is that I was told, once you get to that place where people say, oh, I know I have an effect on my life, and that's where many will say, I need to lift myself up into another idea about what this is going to be. It could be about fate if you are in that, like method of doing the law of attraction, right? Those people already understand that their visions definitely affect the outcome, right? That's one of those misnomers. It's not as simple as that. Your souls may decide to have a little fun with you, guide you in a different direction to see if you can outperform the last soul that thought they were going to make it rich quick. Okay, I get tested every once in a while on whether my mindset is still in the method acting. So some people are saying method actors are going to be coming through in this vision of Channel for the Soul. So get prepared for that celebrity soul session. I know that they're there. But in essence, most people who are in that vision of, I want to get rich quick now. You see these ads about how to place your vision on the next big way to make it big online versus my passion takes me where I need to go. And that's what your soul will decide is more in alignment with you and your hearts, whether or not you want to agree with that vision or not. Do you indeed, massage the soul? It's like that's the nature of what certain people are, kind of trying to rig the system of soul creation. So in essence, some people are going through this world just asking to be saved. Others are in that method of, I'm going to plant my seeds and see where that vision takes me. And if it doesn't feel good because I didn't align myself with the right person at one point in time, right? It may be that your vision got sidetracked a little bit and you need to get back on a different kind of path. That's the nature of where many say, I place my focus on my passions and my desires. And then others in the spiritual mindset are saying, just imagine yourself here in this moment being beautiful and, productive and experiencing the beauty and joy of life. And yet, how many of us say that's a beautiful expression for those who apparently are wishing others not to work, right? It's the paradigms that you're operating in. So if you're in a spiritual paradigm where they're telling you, don't worry so much about the future, worry about today. It's not about whether today works or doesn't work. It doesn't matter. What matters is, are we planting the right seeds for our souls? Because there is a difference. This is when soul communication is instrumental in whether or not you guys are on that path of discovery. You're never on a bad path. It's not bad or good, but you can get those guidance sessions that you can visit my website at brendagervais.com. And at this point, it doesn't matter whether you do or don't get a guidance session, because some people do get their guidance to come through on those guidance for the soul sessions that I do sometimes. It's been a little harder for me to do certain sessions depending on what's going on in my life. I'm no longer advertising on the internet when I come live. I'm assuming most people know that Channel for the Soul has always been on Sunday evenings, and usually it's supposed to be in the mornings. It depends on what's going on. But enough of that. Let's see who wants to break free from that tradition of slavery. I get so many people looking at that video from a long time ago, and that's that vision of who I was in that moment. I was the channel for the soul. I was the one who could come through with those higher visions of wisdom. And yet, in my vision, at that point, during that process of soul embodiment, that vision of channeling very much needed to hear the difference in mindset to be able to articulate the words. So you're going to hear a different voice sometimes in those sessions with channeling, or at least it felt like it was that way. And this is one of those signs for those of you who are open to the nature of soul embodiment or channeling, that you might decide, I don't want to do both. Some people are not comfortable with the idea of other souls coming into their vibration. And in essence, what I want to let people know is that in my vision of love, of soul embodiment, I basically told my soul, I don't want to feel the visions directly, if at all possible. But if their visions are outside of the vision of soul, which in my experience are those souls who've been in this plane, versus those beings that don't vibrate in that vision, then yeah, I want to be able to also bring those through for us, because they offer different perspectives depending on what kind of video we're going to be talking about or what kind of topic. You see, every bit of guidance can come through. I could be that vision of a soul worker who's going to bring through the visions of those family members who have crossed. And you're going to get one level of wisdom with that kind of vision for the most part, depending on where the soul vibrates. Some people still have this vision that their family trees are all that and more. And they are. They brought us into this world, right? In essence, your souls decided to create together. So it's just an honoring of where they are in their own vision. It doesn't mean that their vision is of the highest or is the right thing for you. They do create with you. So it's not about saying there's bad things going on. You don't want to place your mindset in that idea that my family hasn't moved on or that they're in a bad place. Okay? The majority of souls do get lifted up into a higher vibration when they cross over from this plane to another plane. Sometimes we hear those visions of negativity or evil or whatnot that others are still trying to place on us based on the titles of the visions or based on the information that comes through. It depends on who's watching and what kind of guidance they're looking for. Now, all channeling in itself is also under the umbrella of guidance. So even though it might not be like they're trying to tell us what to do, we can look at a celebrity soul session and say to ourselves, wow, that must have been a fascinating career move to be able to move over into that vision of celebrity or even just famous. Because a lot of people wouldn't be considered celebrities, but they were definitely more noteworthy. Or, it could be politicians, it could be authors, it could be anybody of noteworthy. But that's not always going to be the case. Sometimes I might be bringing through those visions of love from a higher vision of guidance. So let's talk about this nature of fate and create with fate. Condoleezza Rice has been a guide for me in her soul level understanding for the last 2 to 3 years without me knowing it, because of the vision of Republican agenda or Democratic agenda that I may or may not be focusing on when I watch the news. How many people want to hear that vision? What's it like to align with souls that don't align with your own spiritual mindset or your own political ideology? That's the nature of strength for certain souls that know how to do that vision. Okay, you set your own ideas aside and you say, what do they have to say? Why are we here with Condoleezza Rice? Those visions are of strength in the female and in those ideas about I am a black female or African American, depending on the vision that others are more comfortable with in their vision. And I'm here to say I made it. I'm in that level of vibration of I made it through the big leagues, right? And now I'm sitting back and I'm watching the show as it plays out. Do we want to honor her soul just because she happened to play baseball? So in her mind, she's like, I liked playing baseball at some point. And so that might ring a bell for some people who are hearing those visions. I get told when I have good days or good decisions, because it'll be told to me in baseball terms. This is for those of you souls who are starting to hear guidance. And they'll say RBI, which is runs batted in. So I'm planting my seeds and then I get these, runs batted in. And every once in a blue moon, I get my home runs. But that's the difference. Those runs batted in are kind of like those seeds. Sometimes I get told that you're growing a weed, or sometimes I get told you need to water a plant. Sometimes I get told various things. Condi, as George Bush would have called her, was his famous friend. And he said, I honor her and I love her for who she was and is in this moment. And I never thought any less of her than I did, right? Everyone's assuming it was a power play to pick her. But in his mind, he's like, I was always on that vision of I need to have a variety of people in my cabinet. I wish I would have done better. So that's his vision now. I didn't do enough to, enlighten my party to the nature of being diverse. Because on a soul level, that's where his soul still resides, in that vision of diversity. Having a soul as one of the top players in the game of politics, and having her be of a female character, right? And well, it's not a character, but we're saying it's part of this vision. And she was also looked at with derision by so many who would deny it in their hearts, but their minds definitely had that vision of, why is this woman in the position that she is? And we want to congratulate all souls who are indeed opened up enough to appreciate the vision of, whether I agree or disagree with the party politics, I understand that soul level understanding does not reside on the plane here. We mostly operate behind the scenes for the majority of people. Our souls are strong. We are indeed enlightened by those souls who understand the nature of, I am more than who I am on this plane. This is the hardest part for many people to understand. It's the hardest part for the majority of people to even grasp or even accept, that there are multiple streams of your own being that are being played out at one time. So what happens is, when you do a soul session, for instance, your guidance is going to come through, give you many suggestions for what paths might be playing out for you, and options for you, depending on whether or not you're looking for comfort, validation, expression of those visions of, I need a better outcome. Most people are looking for better outcomes. But what you have to understand is, if you are in alignment with, I'm always doing different things, it can be a little bit trickier to bring through those future predictions, right? Not really. Most people have a lot of routines that they participate in, and their desires and their soul wishes are very much usually pretty standard or pretty typical, right? Those areas in our life that we may be struggling with, improving on, or wishing for more. Others are in that, kind of mindset of, I'm in despair and I need comfort. And that's the difference. If you go to your soul comforts you night and day. If you go to soul embodiment, you will constantly get reassured and loved and taken care of in your visions, even when you don't plant the right seeds. And then sometimes you get those visions of, based on things that you did, you have discarded this other path, right? It still plays out, but it may be that you just don't experience it in the same way here. You may not get what you want. It's not a all in. You want to go for soul embodiment if you can. It's the beautiful expression. Most, however, are still in the vision of, I want to embody somebody else's soul. I don't want to, rely on my own guidance systems. I don't want to take other people's information. There's many different ideas that people have about what soul embodiment is. It is also very much of a bringing back to yourself aspects of you who you denied as a child or even as an adult. It depends. That you might like, or things that you denied or that others denied you. So with that said, and for a little plug for the soul embodiment sessions that are going to be coming up as well, for those who are very much interested in how to do that vision, you love yourselves fiercely and you don't look back. Okay, so that's where a lot of those visions are having problems. People that are constantly looking back and recreating terrible situations from the past and wondering why they're not creating beautiful futures. Okay, you gotta get out of creating from the past, not even close. Okay, it doesn't exist, but what happens is that if you go down the path of soul embodiment, it might be that there is a part of your past that still needs to be brought forward. Okay, but in the nature of highest wisdom, you would automatically know that part of my life I have put to bed, or it's at rest. I've healed my soul. I've healed my hearts, which is those souls around me, my family tree. I'm at peace. I'm at one with the beauty of who I am. That's the nature of love. And then when you go to those visions of, I need more candles in the wind, this is another vision of a soul who will be getting more airtime and playtime because of his strength in her heart, his vision. And the vision is intersecting with not just one or two souls, but many, because in essence, that song was created for one soul, and then it got reutilized for the death of another soul. Now, there's no need to introduce Sir Elton John. His soul would call him Elton and not Sir. But that's the nature of love, okay? And in those videos, they're very much of a personal nature. They tend to be those souls who I've either identified with, acted with, right? I get people coming through that I've never met. That's the beauty of soul embodiment. And when the soul starts to align with those celebrities, sometimes they keep on coming in. Now, okay, so Crate and Barrel is another vision for someone on the line who understands that that vision was so strong in my life that I kept creating beautiful places for my friends and their worship. So some people worship at stores, almost. This would be the nature of those who are doing a lot of shopping and putting a lot of things out. It's not always bad. See, we place a lot of judgments on those ideas of, if you keep buying, you're going to go down that path of poverty, right? It depends. Okay? Some people are spending outside of their means. Others are on the path of prosperity. We always end and do wish with the ability to create in that vision of peace, prosperity, health, and love. And there's a very strong momentum for those who say, I don't need that. I just want the guides that'll tell me that I'm loved, adored, cherished, and I vibrate in the vision of this soul or this vision of this woman's ideas about enlightenment, about not looking back. Most of the time, if we're looking back, it doesn't mean we can't enjoy those visions, but because we can get memories brought to us from our soul if we're embodied. And it might be if you need a little pick-me-up, or it might be if it's just to see if you're still in that moment of, I'm a victim of that past. Okay. But in general, a lot of us should be putting our focus in the present, and some of us are smart and plant those seeds for future. Others work it out. And I want to talk about a very famous work of art at some point and what I discovered about that vision. But it's not going to be tonight. So I want to take your hands and I want to align with you. This is what souls do. A lot of people are loving the idea of our souls holding our hands, guiding us through this vision. It literally is that way when you do soul embodiment. And others will not understand that creative nature. It doesn't mean we all go through the same experiences or the same types of wisdom. It doesn't mean any path is the same. But what you want is someone who can guide you into that path that is more for you. Now, just because you can have your soul sessions doesn't mean that other visions of guidance or of seasonal allergies, someone on here has seasonal allergies they need to be dealing with sooner rather than later. That's going to tell somebody something. So the idea that dropping all guidance is not the way to go. Because in essence, if you're going through the process of soul embodiment, the last thing you want to do is be alone. Some people do that vision beautifully, but for the most part, it can be a hard process to go through if you have a lot of healing to do. Most souls are indeed going to try to do that vision at some point because it's where we're headed. What people have to be prepared for are those visions of, oh, there's all these cool things that I can do. But you do have, some grieving to do. Some people will do a lot of grieving during that process, depending on what their prospects are like. How many people say, I already know my soul's on my side. I'm good. I'm granting this woman a wish. So that's the nature. Sometimes we wish for our souls to be more enlightened than what they are. Sometimes we don't know where we are. I literally was like just living my life, having fun with various guidance systems, and boom, right? No, I was chosen to do this work at a younger age and had those experiences as a young child as well. So not everyone is meant to do the vision of guidance, but we are definitely on the line with those souls who say, if you are on that path of soul embodiment, you are most likely going to be encouraged to speak your visions out and your experiences to help others accept the visions and accept the pain or suffering that others are going through, who don't even realize they're on that path of soul embodiment and instead get labeled as crazy or as, suicide. People have got to be very clear about what kinds of things can come through. I'm telling you, there are plenty of people who are being labeled as bipolar, schizophrenic, whatnot, who are actually experiencing the visions of soul embodiment and not realizing it. Okay, they're not able to hold the vibration. They are not able to do the healing because they didn't know that that's what they're going through. And in the spiritual community and some religious ideologies, they know those visions of I'm being, guided to those higher levels of wisdom. And in that vision, they realize I might need to kind of lift myself up to those visions of love. So, with that said, I want to honor your visions of suicide. Someone I know in my heart knows that there are plenty of souls on my path who had that vision of either knowing someone, and this is a warning, knowing someone who went down that path or experienced someone's vision of it, and that trauma still exists in the family line. The vision of family trauma has to be discussed in another vision. I'm not going to go into that vision at this point because I have several episodes that have already had to go down that path. Most souls do not want to be remembered for the way that they passed. Okay, it's an honoring of that vision of I'm not in any hellish realm. I had to take off the coat of armor. So there are armors that we put on to protect ourselves from those visions of those souls who still try to come through to put people in their place. It does not mean that your soul is less than if you're not embodied. That is not even remotely the case. Most people don't even know what parts of their souls are left behind. But that's what a soul session will do for you. It will say, have you thought about what you lost out as a child? And even if you can't do it directly, there might be aspects of that vision that can be brought through for you that you can do. And it might be something very simple like, I wanted to be a rock star, but I wasn't. Well, maybe now you can still do the musician part of it. Maybe it's just a matter of taking those lessons again and feeling the vision of it, or revisiting those, places that you used to go to. Some people do need to re-experience their past in order to find another path. And that's where extreme caution is, needed for those souls who still feel like they have that vision of, I'm losing my mind. It can feel that way if you're on the path of soul embodiment. It doesn't mean you do. But what you need to do is guide yourself to those souls who can at least support you during the process. Okay? Don't assume it's always soul embodiment. There could be a neurotransmitter that needs to be adjusted. It depends. Okay? Now, family trees are on the line. Jennifer and Joanne and Allison are 3 different souls that I know who are aligned in one vision and disconnected in another. Okay? This is about telling people how those visions can come through. We assume that we've got everything figured out on this plane when we do our work in a spiritual mindset or religion, right? We accept, we love, we cherish, we adore. Sometimes we let people go. Sometimes they come back into our hearts. Sometimes they never come back into our hearts. But on a soul level, they're usually there creating more discord, right? Sometimes we feel it as discord. But in all honesty, the majority of the time that we let people go, it's an honest understanding, even on the soul level, that that relationship was causing a lot of discord. That's kind of the relationships you want to look at on this plane. It doesn't mean you just automatically, write people off unless they're really hurting you. And that is one of those cases. There's too many people that are being told you don't leave relationships or whatnot. There are patterns of behavior that some people don't even realize that they are encouraging or reproducing. Okay? So this is not a one-on-one session. Okay? But what I do want to say is it's going to be a last-ditch effort to bring through Charlie Sheen again. That man, as he was in that video, very strong in his ability to be open, sincere, and honest about the struggles, right? That's the soul coming through. It's not his vision as he would say it, but it's that nature of in the moment. If I'm being labeled as, a heretic, that's what I get told that certain people are going to label me as, because I'm bringing through truth and wisdom from various levels of understanding. And others are saying, well, my understanding is this. If it doesn't jive with you, don't worry about it. You're still creating beauty. No guide is here to do the work for every single person at one time. So in my life, I always was more accepting of a lot of visions as just being what they were. I have my own ideas, right? I have my own ideas, but I acknowledge the vision of those souls who come through who usually have their hearts on their sleeves. They want to express the condemnation of the nation, right? Other videos that I've put forth are very strong. Those are those societal impact visions or social input. Those are higher level visions that usually come through. And it could be that it was a vision brought through based on ideologies and the future. So if I bring the future back, are you going to be mad at me if it comes true? This is where we try to understand the paths that we're on. So if you have a session and I tell you you're on the path of destruction with a guide named Charlie, right? Or something, right? some people won't believe that vision because they'll already have preconceived notions in their eye or in their minds about who that person is, because they've been conditioned to completely judge or discard people who behave or act in a certain way. And that's the difference between a guide and a god. Okay? Right? God accepts all. You can call it whatever you want. I'm of the nature of source because of certain beliefs, and ideas. I honor God. I love that vision. I grew up with that vision. It was the only source of wisdom that I even kind of knew. But in essence, because of certain conditioned belief sets that I'm not necessarily in alignment with, and the fact that I feel there is more to it than what most people understand, I'm going to still be in that vision of source. Okay. Now, thank you again for watching this vision. The channeling was definitely a small aspect based on what people would assume would have been outside of the vision of who I am. But in all honesty, this is a replay of those souls that still have airtime that they want to come through with. I keep getting told about which stars want to come through. John Bon Jovi is one of them. There's another, but we'll see what happens in another vision. At this point, I'm going to honor all souls, and I'm going to say thank you for watching, and may we all be blessed with peace, love, health, and prosperity. Okay? Take care and have a wonderful evening.